Okay. Cedric, can you hear me? And the chat window is over there on the right side of the little balloon shaped thing. So I don't know if Cedric can hear me or not since he's not responded. Whoever was just coming in now, Margot, comment in chat if you can hear me also. Using the microphone will not work well for me. My speaker won't play very loud. And second problem is I've still got a little bit of hearing problem with my ear, although it's gotten much better since last semester. So I can tell there's something being said because the speaker just will not play very loud. It's a cheap little speaker. So you'll need to type stuff in chat.
There's the other end. So like a party bar. More like tequila and bread.
I'm going to mute that speaker, that microphone. I don't know what's being said there. Okay. This is CIST 2412, and this is the first session, and we are in week 2 now, and I have to bounce back and forth. Even with just 3 classes, which is a smaller amount for me, that I do not have these things memorized, and I don't have my master sheet with me today for some reason. I guess it's sitting in the car and I didn't notice it to notice which chapters we're on, but I think I know what we're on. Okay, so you had chapters 1 and 2 due today, and then chapter 3 and 4 are due next Tuesday. Monday is a holiday. And I'm getting mixed all up on these screens because WebEx gives me more screens up here. So we're doing 3 and 4 this week, and I'm not sure where I put my book. This other one I've got here, I'm gonna have to put it in the notebook. I don't know why they like to do this, but the publisher for a number of years now seem to like to send us, instead of sending us bound books, sending us loose leaf books, which gets confusing. You end up with paper scattered all over the place if you're not careful, and so I'll have to put them in a binder. And I've got some binders sitting here, so I'm not sure. So I can pull these pages out. So they're in the week 1, and a couple of y'all have run into problems on this. And remember, as I do this, that there's the group of you watching live, and then there is also a group that some others that may watch the recording, and hopefully I can get that posted later today. And it may be sitting there available to you. I'm not sure. We used to use Collaborate, and now we're using WebEx. I've used WebEx for some other stuff, but not for doing these, and that I'm running it a little bit differently, and so I'm having to figure things out on it. So you have to bear in mind with me on that one. I do have all of y'all marked down. I don't know if it's going to have where I can, it looks like I'll be able to look and see who all was in here later, but I'm not sure. Now, remember, you do need to post some stuff in the chat. Some of you may have been in here before, in other semesters with me. Some of you may not have. That I'm going to need y'all to make some comment on something that we talk about, or ask me some question in here for you to get credit, because it's supposed to be an engagement activity, and that the school requires that there be stuff showing that y'all participated for me to give you the grade instead of you having to do the discussion, because in the discussion you obviously have to show you participated there with your discussion post. So in week 1, in installing Windows Server 2016, I know several students have had some problems with it. For some reason, several students downloaded Server 2016 and immediately clicked on it, and Windows 10 and 11 will actually let you run off of an ISO file. If you were on 7 or before, it did not. You had to run it through another program to be able to see what was in the ISO file. And one person wiped out their machine. They installed Server 2016 on their machine. You do not want to run that ISO file when you download it. You just want to download it and have the copy on your machine. Then you need to download and install, preferably the latest version of VirtualBox. Now, and then you will create a machine in there. Now, I have got step-by-step instructions showing how to do that, but I had below chapter 1, because that's where some students before said they thought they should be. I have moved them today to being also, actually didn't move them, I copied them today to also being in the chapter 1 folder. After this semester, I'll probably get rid of them sitting outside of the folder. So later in the semester, they'll disappear off that list and shorten that list up a little bit. I may put them over in course documents too. I've had a request to do that. But there is a document there for how to set up each of the 4 machine servers that you're going to run. Okay. They are step-by-step instructions that I did as I did the actual installations. Now, I've had one student tell me that the screens showing VirtualBox do not match to the current copy of VirtualBox at all. Have any of y'all noticed that? I know I did do it a few years ago, and I think it was in version 6 of VirtualBox, and we're on version 7.08 at this point now. That, did y'all see a big change or change at all in what the screens looked like of what I gave you and what you were seeing sitting there in VirtualBox? So the screens have changed on you from what I've got in the handout. Okay, then I will have to go through and look at those. But that should be just on the first few, because that would just be dealing with VirtualBox. Server 2016 screens will not have changed, because Server 2016, you're still using the same copy version of it, Server 2016, as we've been using ever since we went to that version. Because thought that was just a very minor little changes is all I have noticed. Because every time I go to look at the screens to answering questions for students, everything keeps looking familiar to me. So I will look at those and see on preparing on those. I won't make a difference to y'all. The other part is I'm not real sure I want to do that because, well, actually we'll probably still teach these using this for another close to a year, and then we'll go to 2022. Because that course is, the last course is still being developed. And I'm actually developed the first two of the three, and the third one I've got rough, but not had time to do on. Okay, so you will install VirtualBox, create a machine in VirtualBox. 16, I think, is listed there for you, so you can choose it as that's what type operating system is going to use. So the settings it comes up with should be good for you. Okay. You will have to add in VirtualBox, which I think I have you do at the end or later in the installation process, 2 additional network adapters in there because they'll come with just one set for you automatically. And it needs to be internal. The first 2 adapters need to be both internal, and the third one set as net. So then once you create the machine, then it's going to ask you where the ISO file is. And you're going to click on the button at the end of the line and go and find the ISO file, and then you will click on to the next screen, and it will start your machine, the virtual machine, using the ISO file, and then you will go through installing Server 2016 in that virtual machine. Now, when you're using those directions of mine, do be aware of one thing. The settings, like the IP addresses and some of that stuff, you need to may have set a setting wrong. Let me put my phone on do not disturb. Sorry about that. But it'll go through and install Server 2016. Now, when you created the machine, there was a setting in there when you created the virtual hard drive. If you did not use dynamic, which is what I told you to use, and I think it uses it by default, but if you told it to go ahead and do a static hard drive, it will use up a lot of space on your machine. And depending on how much space you've got on your actual drive on your computer. But if you're using a laptop where they've got small SSD drives, you may well need to be looking at getting an external drive to put these virtual machines onto. And that's what I'm doing on my laptop is I've got the virtual machines set on an external drive. The VirtualBox program is actually on the hard drive because the virtual machines do take space, but they take a whole lot less space if you set that hard drive to dynamic, not to static. Because if you do it dynamic, it just creates a minimal space for it. It uses, and then as you start putting stuff out there, and y'all are not going to put much onto that virtual hard drive anyway, so you're not going to use the whole thing of it. So you're only needing a small amount of space on it. That it will increase the size of the file to handle that. Now, once you do get to external drive, now RAM, that's real good amount of RAM. I'm only running 8 gig of RAM on my machine and running fine. Theoretically, you can run it on 4 gig of RAM. But we were just talking about hard drive space, not RAM. Keep in mind, RAM and hard drive space or storage are 2 different things. RAM is your memory, and that's the amount of space it's got to work on things that it's working on at that point. As far as storing them long term is on the storage or the hard drive or the solid state drive. So make sure you keep those two terms straight. I have lots of people get them mixed up, and y'all should have learned the difference between the two back in CIST 1001. But they are distinctly two different things. RAM is like your brain, and it just holds things in it. It will have things in it temporarily stored, but they're only there until the power is turned off and stuff is working on at that point. Just like in your brain, it processes everything. The RAM is also processed where it's processing everything. Actually, the processor was that, but that's where it's holding stuff that it's processing. Your brain has that temporary storage also, but when you die, anything that's in your brain disappears. When you turn the power off to the computer, anything in RAM disappears. Anything on storage stays there. Anything that you wrote down or recorded with your voice on some recording device or whatever still stays around. But if it was just in your brain, we have no way of ever finding out what it was. It goes away. Just like in RAM, when the power's cut off, everything in there goes away. Okay? So be careful when doing your installs, but realize there is a sheet, and I do need to copy that from being below chapter 1 into the chapter 1 folder, because I forgot to copy that over, that tells you what specifications are or settings are for your machines in this class. The handouts I gave you on installing the machines may not have the right settings. The same machines are used in 3 different classes, 24, 12, 13, and 14. However, they have different settings on them in the different books for those classes, but the 3 books all use the same basic machines, but use different addresses and such on them. So my directions may have been created for one of the other classes and have the wrong settings as you're going along through it. So you do have to look at the settings sheet to see what the settings should be. Print screens. And that I've told you, you have to do a print screen for each activity. They need to be print screens, either done using the print screen button. If you're using multiple monitors, the print screen button will not work for you. You'll get way too much stuff because it will actually print every one of your monitors in the print screen. But if you're only using one monitor, which is my case here in the office at this point, because the other video card has failed in this computer, and 3 to 9 months, 3 months ago, they told me they ordered a new computer for me. And 9 months ago, they told me they were going to be ordering a new computer for me. And so it didn't make any sense to work on getting another video card or anything to go in it. So I'm operating off one monitor, so I can do fine. But when I had 2 monitors, if you did print screen, the button, you got way too much stuff. If you use the snipping tool, you can go in and just choose what you want to go into the print screen that you're creating. Make sure you do include the Windows taskbar with the date in the area you select, and then that you'll paste, and it actually puts it on the clipboard just like the print screen button does, and then you will paste it into a Word document. So do be careful on those, making sure you get that correct. Because if you look at my grading information, if you don't include that taskbar with the date, you will lose points. Okay. Questions on all of that? And y'all have put in some extra questions. So some extra comments that it's rolled the chat session on down for me, which helps. Okay. And I was actually going to that and I forgot about on it. Now, once you get the external drive, what you're going to do is that you're just going to copy those files, and I don't remember the folder it puts them in right off. I think it's in virtual machines and documents, but I'm not for sure on that. I'll have to double check that. You'll copy those files for those virtual machines, which they have names like you named them, and there's a couple of them for each machine. You'll copy those from your built-in hard drive to your external hard drive. I'd put them in the same similar folder on that one. Definitely, if I remember right, they go by folders. So I will try to do a set of directions for you later today. And I'll post that for everybody. And then you will need to go back in VirtualBox, and those machines won't be accessible now. Well, they'll still be accessible, but if you just copied them, they're still sitting on the other machine. Well, you want to delete them off the actual hard drive in the machine at that point, once you've copied them to the external drive. Then in VirtualBox, I would delete each of those machines, and then I believe it's under Add in VirtualBox. I can't remember. And I've got an older copy of VirtualBox on this machine. So that's the other part. I've made a request for a new copy for me to be installed, because this has actually got version 6 on it still. And I can't install stuff on this machine. And you will go to machine and go to add, and then you'll go look out there to the new location that you put them, choose it, and then it will put the machine there in VirtualBox for you, and that you don't have to do anything else. So you're just going to move them over to the new location and then delete them in VirtualBox Manager, and then you're going to add from the new location, and they become available immediately. And I'd rather do this from home to show y'all the steps on that, because I say this is version 6 of VirtualBox here in the office. And that I've got the latest version of 7.08 running on my computer at home. So it'd be better for me to give you those directions done when I get home tonight than to do them here from school, because y'all have already told me there is some slight changes in how the screens look. And that way I'd have them done with the correct screens for you. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Looks like we had somebody else join in. Maybe not. Okay. Let me make sure I've got everybody marked present here. Citric. Looks like 3 of y'all here plus me. So I will get that one done this afternoon. Okay. All right. Other questions for me? So chapter 1 and 2, you're actually 2 is where they actually go through doing the install. Chapter 1 they did having you go through, look at stuff. So some of what they have you doing in 2, and I think actually in chapter 2 I told you to go back and do an assignment from 1, or vice versa. I don't remember how that worked. I know what their idea was there, but how do you go through and look at Server 2016 if you don't have it installed yet? So, but that was the way that he did the book when he wrote it. So that's what you did in chapter 1 and 2. In chapter 3, they have you configuring it. So you're going to go through and set some more settings in it and learn how to set those settings up on it. And then in chapter 4, you're looking at different type file systems. The two big file systems you're going to deal with is going to be NTFS, which is what you're going to most commonly use. And then FAT32 is what you used before we had NTFS. Until we recently, as the thumb drives, flash drives, whatever you want to call them, and I've seen about 30 different names for them, got as big as they are now, that they were having to use FAT32. And now, because the sizes got big enough, you can actually use NTFS on them. So a lot of times they will have NTFS on them, but sometimes they're using FAT32. There is limitations in size of files that you can have in FAT32. There is actually in NTFS, but it's so large that we haven't bumped into that issue at all yet at this point. Now the NT, Microsoft never did tell us what NT stood for. FAT is file allocation table, and it goes back to FAT8 from the original DOS, and then went FAT16, and then went FAT32 as we went to 32-bit systems. And then they created NTFS along the way for a more secure file system. And then your CDs and DVDs use a different file system for recording stuff on them. It's going somewhere with that, and I don't remember what it was. So do be aware of those differences. Oh, I know. So FAT was file allocation table, and it created a table that told you where all the files were. And that was a file allocation table. NTFS is a file system. It's NT that came out with Windows NT, but Microsoft never did really tell us what NT stood for. Some people think it's next technology, new technology, so on. But they've never said what in the world the letters were actually supposed to stand for. So it's NTFS. The FS is definitely file system, and you do have some others that have file system as part of theirs. There are a number of other file systems, and they're not all compatible. FAT32 and NTFS, and actually the previous FATs can all be read by Windows. But like on your Mac, it uses a different file system by default, although it can read. I believe both of those now. For a good while, it's just FAT32, but I'm pretty sure that Macs can read the NTFS now too, but they have their own little bit different file system, along with Linux goes off on a different approach than NTFS also, although most copies of Linux now have gotten more compatible on that. So there's more crossover on it. All right. Questions for me. Next week, we will meet on Tuesday. Next Monday is Memorial Day, is a holiday, and the college is closed that day. I'm intending to probably not get online hardly next weekend for classes. I've got a bunch of things I need to do. I was hoping to work on yesterday, but I spent somewhere close to 6 hours or more working on classes yesterday. Saturday, 3 hours, and I was helping with a horse show for about 4.5 hours, and then drive time over there and back. So 5.5, 6 hours on Saturday. And Friday night, I actually was working for the school also. That I gave a scholarship over at Ringgold High School's honors night. And so that ate up my evening from 5:30 to 9 o'clock, because their honors program there ran from 6:30 to 8:15. And when you figure a 45-minute drive in there, that it took that long, and actually it took me longer, although I don't consider that as work time. because while I was over there in Ringgold, after we finished up on that, I went ahead and ate supper at Raphael's in downtown Ringgold before I came back home. All right, so I am going to change the due date for chapter 1 and 2 because of so many people having some different glitches. I am going to go in there and reset it to be on Wednesday night. But that doesn't change any other due dates the rest of the semester. So what's due next Tuesday is still due next Tuesday. Nothing is due on Monday. Everything's due Tuesday next week in my classes. That would have been due on Monday. Any questions? And then y'all can email me during the day. I will be answering emails all day. I did answer emails all day Saturday and Sunday this weekend, but that ended up not being able to do things I needed to do. Because I got a bunch of stuff I've got to get done on the computer and stuff for some other stuff. I did get out on my bicycle on both days, but for about 30 minutes. But beyond that, it was a lot of time spent just on school stuff that shouldn't have been. So I probably will cut back on how much I do of even looking at email in the evening or weekend the rest of this week, because I need some of a break and I need to get on this other stuff. Although we've already established I've got to do something tonight when I get home. So I've got to work on y'all's classes anyway for a little bit. And that is to build just a set of directions about how to move your machines from the from the internal hard drive to an external hard drive and keep them working in VirtualBox. Because I will probably still answer some point in the evening and next weekend. I'll probably answer a little bit, but don't look for me to be on continuously throughout most of the day or throughout most of the evening, because I know y'all do need answers when y'all do have questions. I have been an online student taking computer classes also. All right. If there's not any other questions, I'm going to tell you to have a good week, and I will see y'all next Tuesday. I may get y'all's grades in real quickly. The other class I did. So that'll show for the week 2 discussion. But if I don't get them in real quickly, which some weeks I will not, because I've got lots of stuff going on some weeks, that they will get put in ultimately. I do have them written down, and my understanding is out here that WebEx has got that information recorded for me also. Recordings, I will transfer it as soon as I can, and I've got to figure that out because I have not done any recording posting before. That will be a new one for me using WebEx. I did it all the time on Collaborate, and I actually used to do it on Teams, but I have not done it with WebEx, and each of the programs are different. So I am going to stop the recording.